Hello, friends. Welcome back. If you're looking for a complete and in depth review of this Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, 1993, you've come to the right place. In today's video, we'll break down the full story, explore the talented cast, analyze the box office performance, and highlight the most powerful moments that make this film stand out. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get started. The story begins not with fame or victory, but with struggle, discipline, and identity. In the crowded streets of Hong Kong, a young Bruce Lee grows up surrounded by energy, conflict, and constant pressure. The world around him is fast moving and unpredictable, shaped by cultural tension, street violence, and the expectations placed upon him by family and society. From an early age, Bruce appears different from others, not just because of his restless spirit, but because of the intensity burning inside him. Portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, Bruce Lee is introduced as a young man filled with passion, confidence, and determination, but also emotional conflict. He possesses extraordinary physical talent and sharp instincts, yet he struggles to control his anger and impulsiveness. Fighting becomes more than self-defense. It becomes an expression of identity, pride, and survival in a world where respect often has to be earned through strength. The film quickly establishes Bruce not simply as a fighter, but as someone searching for purpose. His energy feels too powerful to remain confined within ordinary life. Every confrontation, every challenge, and every setback slowly shapes the mindset that will later transform him into a global legend. But at this stage, he is still a young man trying to understand himself and his place in the world. Bruce's relationship with martial arts becomes central to his development. Under the guidance of Master Ip Man, portrayed by Wang Luoyong, Bruce begins learning not just physical techniques, but discipline, balance, and philosophy. Martial arts are presented not as violence alone, but as a deeper path towards self-understanding and control over fear and emotion. Yet Bruce's rebellious nature makes his journey difficult. He refuses to accept limitations easily, and his confidence often pushes him into dangerous confrontations. His fighting ability grows rapidly, but so does the concern surrounding his future. Family members fear that if he remains in Hong Kong, his temper and street conflicts may eventually destroy him. At the same time, the story introduces an almost symbolic internal struggle within Bruce himself. The film portrays recurring visions and emotional fears connected to darkness, pressure, and the idea of destiny. These moments represent more than literal conflict. They reflect Bruce's fear of failure, weakness, and losing control over the powerful emotions driving him forward. As tensions continue growing around him, Bruce's future begins moving toward an important turning point. His family decides that leaving Hong Kong may be the only way for him to escape constant violence and create a better future. This decision changes the direction of his life completely, setting him on the path toward America, a place filled with opportunity, challenge, prejudice, and transformation. The atmosphere of the story during this opening phase feels deeply emotional and inspirational at the same time. Bruce is not yet the world-famous icon people will eventually know. He is simply a young man carrying enormous potential, struggling to shape his identity while fighting against the chaos surrounding him. And as Bruce prepares to leave behind the only world he has ever known, one truth quietly begins to emerge. Great legends are not born through fame alone. They are shaped through struggle, discipline, sacrifice, and the refusal to stop moving forward. because sometimes the journey toward greatness begins long before the world even notices your name. As Bruce Lee leaves Hong Kong behind and travels toward America, the story enters a new phase filled with uncertainty, ambition, and cultural change. The move is not simply about geography, it represents the beginning of transformation. Bruce is stepping into a world completely different from the streets and traditions that shaped him, carrying only his determination, martial arts training, and belief that he is meant for something greater. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, arrives in the United States as a young man full of energy and confidence, but also deeply alone. America appears filled with opportunity, yet it quickly becomes clear that success will not come easily. He is an outsider in a society where cultural barriers and prejudice create invisible walls around him. The film presents this stage of Bruce's life as both exciting and emotionally difficult. He works hard to survive, taking small jobs while trying to build stability in an unfamiliar environment. Yet, despite the challenges, his personality remains impossible to ignore. Bruce carries a natural charisma, intensity, and confidence that draw attention wherever he goes. Even when struggling financially or socially, he refuses to let humiliation weaken his ambition. Martial arts continue shaping his identity during this transition. Bruce does not view Kung Fu merely as combat, it is part of his philosophy, discipline, and understanding of life itself. Through teaching and demonstrations, he slowly begins sharing his skills with others, introducing people to a style and mindset many Americans have never experienced before. At the same time, the story highlights the discrimination Bruce faces because of his background. He is often underestimated or treated as an outsider, especially within environments dominated by traditional expectations and stereotypes. These moments become important because they strengthen Bruce's determination to prove himself not only as a fighter but as a human being worthy of respect. Bruce's confidence also begins evolving into something more focused and purposeful. While he still possesses emotional intensity and rebellious energy, America forces him to mature in new ways. Survival now depends not just on fighting ability but on discipline, adaptability, and vision for the future. During this stage, Bruce also meets Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship becomes one of the emotional foundations of the story. Linda sees beyond Bruce's confidence and physical skill, recognizing the ambition, vulnerability, and humanity beneath his larger than life personality. Their connection introduces warmth and emotional balance into Bruce's otherwise relentless journey. The relationship between Bruce and Linda develops naturally through mutual respect and admiration. She supports his dreams even when the world around him remains uncertain. For Bruce, Linda represents more than romance. She becomes emotional stability during a time when he is struggling to build his future from nothing. As Bruce continues teaching martial arts and pushing against limitations placed upon him, his reputation slowly begins growing. More people become interested in his philosophy, speed, and revolutionary approach to combat. Yet, even with this progress, obstacles remain everywhere. Social prejudice, financial instability, and resistance from traditional martial arts communities who reject his willingness to teach beyond cultural boundaries. The atmosphere of the story becomes increasingly inspirational during this phase. Bruce is no longer simply surviving in America, he is beginning to challenge the expectations surrounding him. Every setback strengthens his determination rather than destroying it, and as Bruce Lee continues building his life in a foreign land, one truth begins standing above every struggle. Greatness is not created by comfort or acceptance. It is built by continuing forward even when the world refuses to believe in you. Because sometimes the people who change history are the ones who first had to fight simply to be seen. As Bruce Lee begins adjusting to life in America, the reality of his struggle becomes more visible. The excitement of new opportunity is balanced by loneliness, financial hardship, and the constant pressure of proving himself in a society that often views him as an outsider. Yet, despite these obstacles, Bruce refuses to abandon the intensity and ambition driving him forward. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues developing both physically and mentally during this stage of the story. His martial arts skills attract attention almost everywhere he goes, but what truly separates him from others is his philosophy. Bruce believes martial arts should evolve rather than remain trapped inside rigid tradition. To him, fighting is not only about technique, it is about expression, adaptability, and understanding oneself completely. This mindset creates tension with more traditional martial arts practitioners. Many believe Kung Fu should remain restricted within cultural boundaries and taught only to select people. Bruce openly rejects this idea. He believes knowledge should not be limited by race or tradition, and this belief becomes one of the defining aspects of his journey. The film portrays Bruce as someone constantly pushing against limitations placed upon him by others. Whether facing prejudice, rejection, or criticism, he refuses to accept being controlled by society's expectations. His confidence often appears intimidating, but beneath it lies a deeper emotional drive, the desire to create an identity based on truth rather than stereotype. At the same time, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, grows stronger and more meaningful. Linda becomes one of the few people capable of understanding the emotional pressure Bruce carries inside him. She sees not only the fighter and performer, but also the vulnerable human being struggling to balance ambition with emotional peace. Their relationship adds warmth and humanity to the story. Bruce's life is filled with conflict, discipline, and relentless self improvement, but Linda provides emotional grounding during moments of uncertainty. Together, they begin building a future despite financial struggles and social obstacles surrounding them. Meanwhile, Bruce's reputation as a martial arts teacher continues spreading. Students become fascinated by his speed, charisma, and revolutionary ideas about combat. Unlike traditional instructors, Bruce teaches with passion and innovation, encouraging freedom of movement and personal expression rather than rigid imitation. His philosophy slowly begins changing the way people think about martial arts entirely. However, success also brings resistance. Some members of the traditional martial arts community view Bruce's methods as disrespectful and dangerous. His willingness to teach non Chinese students becomes especially controversial, creating growing tension that threatens to erupt into direct confrontation. The emotional atmosphere during this stage feels both hopeful and intense. Bruce is slowly building a life and identity in America, but every step forward also creates new challenges. The closer he moves towards success, the more opposition he encounters from people unwilling to accept change. Yet Bruce's determination only grows stronger. He refuses to allow fear, prejudice, or tradition to define the limits of his future. And as Bruce Lee continues fighting for respect in a world that constantly doubts him, one powerful truth begins emerging. Real strength is not just physical power, it is the courage to remain yourself even when the world demands that you become someone else. Because sometimes changing history begins with refusing to accept the limits others place upon you. As Bruce Lee's reputation begins spreading across America, his life enters a stage filled with growing ambition, recognition, and conflict. The young immigrant who once struggled simply to survive is now slowly becoming known for his extraordinary martial arts ability, revolutionary philosophy, and powerful personality. Yet with greater visibility comes greater resistance from those who fear the changes he represents. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues pushing the boundaries of traditional martial arts teaching. His classes attract students from different backgrounds, something considered highly controversial by conservative martial arts communities at the time. Bruce believes martial arts belong to humanity, not to one race or culture alone. This belief becomes central to his identity and one of the reasons his influence begins growing rapidly. The film presents Bruce not only as a fighter but as a thinker and innovator. He questions rigid systems and refuses to blindly follow traditions that limit growth. His approach to combat emphasizes adaptability, speed, freedom of movement, and mental discipline. Rather than forcing students into strict forms, he encourages them to understand themselves and react naturally in combat situations. This philosophy fascinates many people but deeply angers others. Some traditional martial artists view Bruce's teachings as disrespectful to cultural heritage. To them, his openness threatens centuries of established hierarchy and exclusivity. The tension surrounding Bruce slowly transforms from disagreement into personal hostility. At the same time, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, continues becoming more meaningful and supportive. Together, they begin building a life based on shared belief and determination despite social judgment and financial challenges. Linda remains one of Bruce's strongest emotional supports, helping him maintain balance during moments of frustration and uncertainty. The story also begins exploring Bruce's emotional complexity more deeply. Despite his confidence and growing success, he continues battling internal fears connected to pressure, destiny, and failure. The film symbolically represents these struggles through recurring visions and emotional darkness that seem to follow him throughout his journey. These moments reflect Bruce's fear that greatness may come with sacrifice and suffering. As Bruce's popularity grows, opportunities in entertainment begin appearing. People become increasingly fascinated not only by his martial arts skill, but also by his charisma, energy, and screen presence. Bruce realizes that film and television may offer a way to introduce his philosophy and culture to a much larger audience. However, Hollywood itself presents another obstacle. Bruce quickly discovers that the entertainment industry is filled with stereotypes and limitations regarding Asian actors. Despite his obvious talent and charisma, producers and executives struggle to imagine him as a leading figure capable of carrying major productions. This rejection frustrates Bruce deeply because he knows he has something unique to offer the world. He understands his potential long before many others do, and the inability of the industry to recognize that potential becomes another battle he must fight. The atmosphere during this stage of the story becomes increasingly inspirational and emotional. Bruce is no longer simply trying to survive in America, he is trying to change how people think about martial arts, identity, and representation itself. Every obstacle placed before him only strengthens his determination to break through it. And as Bruce Lee moves closer toward larger opportunities and greater conflict, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. People who challenge old systems are often resisted before they are respected, because sometimes true revolution begins with one person refusing to accept the limits of tradition, fear, and prejudice. As Bruce Lee's influence continues expanding, his life becomes increasingly divided between opportunity and resistance. His martial arts school gains attention, his philosophy begins attracting loyal students, and his confidence as a teacher and performer grows stronger every day. Yet, the more successful he becomes, the more intense the opposition around him also becomes. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, refuses to compromise his beliefs for acceptance. He continues teaching martial arts to students from all backgrounds, openly rejecting traditions that attempt to limit knowledge based on race or exclusivity. To Bruce, martial arts are meant to help people grow, not divide them. This belief becomes one of the central driving forces behind his journey. However, many traditional martial artists see Bruce's actions as disrespectful to long standing customs. Tension grows steadily between Bruce and members of the martial arts community who believe he is breaking sacred rules. What begins as criticism slowly evolves into direct hostility, creating pressure that threatens both his reputation and safety. The film presents Bruce as someone constantly fighting on multiple levels at once. Physically, he trains harder than ever, pushing his body toward extraordinary speed and precision. Mentally, he continues refining his philosophy, searching for freedom rather than limitation inside combat itself. Emotionally, however, he carries increasing pressure from society, career struggles, and the fear that success may always remain just beyond reach. At the same time, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, becomes stronger and more emotionally important. Linda believes in Bruce completely, even during moments when the world around him refuses to recognize his potential. Their relationship provides emotional stability during a period filled with uncertainty and conflict. Together, they face social judgment, financial pressure, and cultural prejudice, yet their connection remains grounded in trust and admiration. Linda understands that Bruce's ambition is not driven by ego alone. It comes from a deep desire to prove that identity and talent should never be limited by race or stereotype. Meanwhile, Bruce's growing popularity leads him closer to opportunities in television and film. His martial arts demonstrations captivate audiences because they feel unlike anything people have seen before. His movements are faster, more fluid, and more expressive than traditional cinematic fighting styles. More importantly, his personality carries confidence and authenticity that make him impossible to ignore on screen. But Hollywood remains resistant. Producers continue viewing Asian actors through narrow stereotypes, refusing to imagine Bruce as a major leading figure. These limitations frustrate him deeply because he knows he possesses the charisma, intelligence, and presence necessary to succeed at the highest level. The emotional atmosphere during this stage becomes increasingly intense. Bruce is no longer simply fighting personal battles, he is challenging entire systems built around tradition, prejudice, and limitation. Every rejection strengthens his determination instead of breaking it. At the same time, the symbolic emotional darkness following Bruce throughout the film grows stronger. His recurring fears and visions reflect internal pressure created by ambition, responsibility, and the sense that greatness may demand painful sacrifice. The closer he moves toward success, the heavier these emotional burdens become. And as Bruce Lee continues pushing against barriers placed before him, one powerful truth begins standing above everything else. Real change never comes easily. The people who redefine history are often the same people society first tries hardest to reject, because sometimes greatness is not simply about talent, it is about having the courage to keep moving forward when the world keeps telling you to stop. As Bruce Lee's reputation continues spreading, his life enters a period where ambition and frustration begin colliding more intensely than ever before. He is becoming increasingly recognized for his incredible martial arts ability and magnetic personality, yet the opportunities available to him remain limited by prejudice and outdated thinking within the entertainment industry. The closer Bruce moves towards success, the more clearly he sees the barriers standing in his way. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues training relentlessly, pushing both his body and mind beyond ordinary limits. Martial arts for Bruce are no longer simply a skill or profession, they become a philosophy guiding every aspect of his life. He believes true combat is based on freedom, adaptability, and self expression rather than rigid forms and restrictions. This philosophy slowly evolves into what will later become one of Bruce's greatest contributions to martial arts culture. He begins shaping ideas centered around efficiency, fluid movement, and reacting naturally instead of following fixed patterns. To Bruce, limitations are dangerous because they prevent growth and individuality. At the same time, Bruce's public image continues growing through demonstrations, teaching, and television appearances. Audiences are fascinated by his speed, charisma, and confidence. Whenever Bruce enters a room, he commands attention not only because of his physical skill, but because of the energy and certainty he carries within himself. However, Hollywood continues treating him unfairly. Despite obvious talent and popularity, Bruce repeatedly encounters executives who cannot imagine an Asian actor leading major productions. The industry's stereotypes frustrate him deeply because he understands his own potential long before others are willing to acknowledge it. These struggles begin affecting Bruce emotionally. He works harder than ever, yet still feels trapped between what he knows he can become and what society is willing to allow. The film portrays this frustration not as bitterness alone, but as the emotional cost of constantly fighting against systems built to exclude people like him. Meanwhile, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, remains one of the strongest parts of his life. Linda continues supporting Bruce through every setback and disappointment, encouraging him to believe in his vision even when the world refuses to understand it. Together, they begin building a family while navigating the pressures surrounding Bruce's growing ambition. The story also deepens Bruce's symbolic internal conflict. His recurring fears and visions become more intense, representing emotional pressure connected to destiny, failure, and the fear of losing himself in pursuit of greatness. These moments add psychological depth to the story, showing that beneath Bruce's confidence exists vulnerability and emotional struggle. At the same time, Bruce's revolutionary ideas about martial arts continue creating conflict with traditional practitioners. Many still view his openness and modern philosophy as disrespectful to cultural tradition. Tension surrounding him grows stronger, creating the sense that confrontation is becoming unavoidable. The atmosphere during this stage feels inspirational but emotionally heavy. Bruce is clearly moving toward greatness, yet every step forward demands sacrifice, endurance, and emotional resilience. Success does not arrive easily for him, it must be fought for repeatedly against prejudice, doubt, and resistance. And as Bruce Lee continues chasing opportunities beyond the limits society places around him, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Visionary people often see the future long before the world is ready for it, because sometimes the greatest challenge is not discovering your potential, but convincing others to believe it exists. As Bruce Lee's journey continues, the pressure surrounding his life grows heavier from every direction. His talent is undeniable, his philosophy is revolutionary, and his determination seems unstoppable. Yet he remains trapped inside systems, unwilling to fully accept him. The closer Bruce moves toward success, the more intense the resistance against him becomes. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, dedicates himself completely to martial arts and personal growth during this stage of the story. His training becomes almost obsessive, driven not by vanity but by the belief that the human body and mind should never remain limited by tradition or fear. Bruce constantly experiments with movement, speed, timing, and efficiency, searching for what he believes is the purest form of combat expression. The film presents Bruce as a visionary far ahead of his time. While others cling to rigid martial arts systems and old traditions, Bruce believes true strength comes from adaptability and freedom. He encourages students to think independently, react naturally, and develop their own understanding of combat rather than blindly copying established forms. This philosophy fascinates many people but deeply threatens others. Traditional martial arts communities continue criticizing Bruce for teaching non Chinese students and for openly challenging long held customs. What makes the conflict more serious is that Bruce refuses to apologize or compromise his beliefs simply to gain approval. Meanwhile, Bruce's popularity continues growing through public demonstrations and appearances. Audiences are captivated by his energy, confidence, and incredible physical speed. On screen and in person, he possesses a magnetic presence that makes him impossible to ignore. Even those who underestimate him initially often leave shocked by his charisma and skill. Yet, despite this growing admiration, Hollywood still refuses to fully recognize his potential. Producers and studio executives continue limiting Asian actors to stereotypes and secondary roles. Bruce becomes increasingly frustrated because he understands that he has the talent to become a leading global star, but the industry around him remains trapped in outdated thinking. This frustration creates emotional strain inside Bruce. He feels caught between enormous potential and constant rejection. Every success seems followed by another reminder that society still struggles to see him as equal to others. The emotional burden of constantly fighting for recognition begins affecting him more deeply. At home, however, Bruce finds emotional strength through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Linda continues standing beside him during moments of doubt and disappointment, believing in his vision even when others refuse to understand it. Their relationship becomes a source of emotional balance within Bruce's increasingly intense life. The symbolic emotional darkness following Bruce throughout the film also becomes more powerful during this phase. His visions and fears reflect growing anxiety about destiny, sacrifice, and the possibility that greatness may demand personal suffering. These moments remind viewers that beneath Bruce's confidence lies a man carrying enormous emotional pressure. As tensions with traditional martial arts communities continue rising, the feeling of inevitable confrontation grows stronger. Bruce's refusal to obey outdated rules makes him both inspirational and dangerous in the eyes of those protecting tradition. The atmosphere of this stage feels deeply motivational yet emotionally intense. Bruce is evolving into a revolutionary figure, but every step toward greatness comes with resistance, sacrifice, and emotional isolation. And as Bruce Lee continues fighting against prejudice, limitation, and expectation, one truth rises above everything else. People who transform the world are rarely accepted immediately, because sometimes true greatness means standing alone long enough for the future to finally catch up with your vision. As Bruce Lee's influence continues growing across America, his life reaches a stage where ambition, pressure, and destiny begin colliding more powerfully than ever before. He is no longer simply a martial arts teacher struggling for recognition. He is slowly becoming a symbol of change, determination, and cultural transformation. Yet, the greater his impact becomes, the more resistance and emotional pressure surround him. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues refining his revolutionary approach to martial arts. His philosophy evolves beyond traditional systems into something more personal and fluid. Bruce believes combat should adapt naturally to the individual rather than forcing people into rigid structures. Speed, instinct, timing, and freedom of movement become central to his teachings. This mindset begins separating him completely from traditional martial arts culture. Many older practitioners view Bruce as rebellious and disrespectful because he openly rejects restrictions tied to race, tradition, and outdated hierarchy. However, Bruce refuses to step backward simply to gain approval. He believes progress only happens when people challenge limitations instead of protecting them. The tension surrounding Bruce eventually grows into direct confrontation. Members of the traditional martial arts community become increasingly angry over his willingness to teach non Chinese students and his criticism of rigid martial systems. The conflict is no longer philosophical alone, it becomes personal and emotional. At the same time, Bruce's popularity continues expanding through demonstrations, teaching, and television appearances. People are drawn not only to his extraordinary skill, but also to his personality. Bruce carries confidence, charisma, intelligence, and intensity that make him unforgettable. Audiences begin realizing they are witnessing someone completely different from any martial artist they have seen before. However, Hollywood still remains frustratingly resistant. Despite obvious talent and growing popularity, Bruce continues facing rejection because the entertainment industry struggles to imagine an Asian actor as a leading global star. This deeply frustrates him because he understands his own potential clearly while others remain trapped inside stereotypes and prejudice. The emotional weight of these struggles begins affecting Bruce more heavily during this stage. He works relentlessly, constantly training, teaching, studying philosophy, and chasing opportunities, yet still feels blocked by systems unwilling to evolve. The pressure of constantly proving himself becomes emotionally exhausting. Meanwhile, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, remains a crucial source of emotional support. Linda continues believing in Bruce even during moments of anger, frustration, and doubt. Their growing family provides moments of warmth and peace within Bruce's otherwise intense and demanding life. The symbolic darkness haunting Bruce throughout the film also grows stronger. His visions and emotional fears represent the pressure of greatness itself, the fear that ambition, conflict, and destiny may eventually consume him emotionally or physically. These moments reveal that beneath Bruce's powerful public image exists vulnerability and deep internal struggle. As opportunities in entertainment slowly begin increasing, Bruce realizes that success in Hollywood may be the only way to truly share his philosophy and identity with the world. Film and television are no longer simply career ambitions, they become tools for breaking stereotypes and changing cultural perception entirely. The atmosphere during this stage feels both inspirational and emotionally charged. Bruce stands on the edge of larger success, but every step forward demands sacrifice, resilience, and emotional endurance. And as Bruce Lee continues pushing against every barrier placed before him, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The people who redefine culture are often forced to fight hardest against the systems refusing to change. Because sometimes greatness is not only about talent or success, it is about having the courage to keep believing in your vision while the world struggles to understand it. As Bruce Lee's reputation continues spreading across America, the pressure surrounding his life reaches an entirely new level. His philosophy, martial arts skill, and growing public recognition begin transforming him into far more than a teacher or performer. Bruce is becoming a symbol of change itself, a figure challenging cultural stereotypes, traditional limitations, and society's expectations all at once. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, remains completely devoted to self improvement during this phase of the story. His training grows even more intense, driven by a belief that human potential should never remain trapped by rigid systems or fear of innovation. Bruce constantly experiments with movement, speed, timing, and adaptability, shaping what will eventually become one of the most influential martial arts philosophies in history. To Bruce, martial arts are not about memorizing fixed patterns, they are about understanding oneself completely and responding naturally in every situation. This revolutionary mindset inspires students and audiences alike, but it also creates stronger hostility from traditional martial arts communities who believe Bruce's ideas threaten cultural structure and authority. The conflict surrounding him becomes increasingly personal. Bruce's refusal to obey old rules, especially regarding who is allowed to learn martial arts, angers powerful figures within traditional circles. They see his openness and independence as disrespectful rebellion, while Bruce sees their restrictions as fear disguised as tradition. At the same time, Bruce's popularity with audiences continues growing rapidly. Public demonstrations and television appearances showcase not only his extraordinary physical ability but also his confidence and charisma. People watching Bruce feel they are witnessing something completely new. His movements appear faster, more fluid, and more expressive than anything mainstream audiences have experienced before. However, Hollywood still struggles to fully accept him. Despite his obvious talent and screen presence, producers continue viewing Asian actors through stereotypes and limited expectations. Bruce becomes increasingly frustrated because he understands he could become a major leading star if given the opportunity. The industry's inability to recognize this truth deeply affects him emotionally. The film portrays Bruce's frustration as more than career disappointment. It reflects the emotional exhaustion of constantly fighting to prove his humanity and worth in systems designed to underestimate him. Every rejection feels connected not just to talent but to identity itself. Meanwhile, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, remains one of the emotional anchors of his life. Linda continues supporting Bruce through moments of doubt, anger, and disappointment. Their bond grows stronger as they build a family together, creating moments of warmth and peace within Bruce's otherwise intense world. Yet, the symbolic darkness haunting Bruce throughout the film becomes more intense during this stage. His recurring visions and emotional fears represent the psychological burden of ambition, pressure, and destiny. The closer Bruce moves toward greatness, the heavier these emotional shadows seem to become. At the same time, Bruce begins realizing that success in entertainment could allow him to accomplish something far greater than fame alone. Through film and television, he could challenge stereotypes, inspire people worldwide, and introduce a completely different image of Asian identity and martial arts culture to global audiences. The atmosphere during this phase feels deeply motivational but emotionally heavy. Bruce is clearly approaching a major turning point in his life, yet every opportunity arrives surrounded by struggle, sacrifice, and emotional tension. And as Bruce Lee continues refusing to surrender to prejudice, limitation, and fear, one powerful truth begins standing above everything else. Real legends are not created because the world makes room for them. They are created because they force the world to see possibilities it once refused to imagine, because sometimes changing history begins with one person refusing to accept the role society assigned to them. As Bruce Lee's journey moves deeper into his rise in America, the story enters a phase where success begins to feel closer, but so does the cost of achieving it. His name is becoming more recognized, his martial arts philosophy is spreading further, and his influence is quietly reshaping how people think about combat and discipline. Yet behind this growing momentum, pressure continues building in ways that are both professional and deeply personal. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, is now balancing multiple identities at once: teacher, innovator, performer, and father. His martial arts system continues evolving into something uniquely his own, focusing on efficiency, directness, and natural movement. He rejects unnecessary complexity and believes true mastery comes from simplicity combined with absolute awareness. This philosophy continues attracting serious students, including actors and martial artists, who see Bruce not just as a fighter, but as someone redefining physical expression itself. His influence begins reaching Hollywood circles more directly as people become curious about his abilities and presence. However, the entertainment industry still resists fully embracing him as a leading figure. Bruce continues encountering limitations shaped by stereotypes and outdated casting expectations. Even when his talent is undeniable, he is often seen through narrow roles instead of being recognized as a potential global star capable of carrying major productions. This ongoing rejection affects Bruce more deeply at this stage of his life. The struggle is no longer about proving skill, it becomes about proving identity, value, and representation. He understands that what he is fighting against is larger than individual opinions, it is an entire system of perception. At home, Bruce finds emotional grounding through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship continues strengthening as they build a family together. Linda provides stability in a life filled with constant pressure and uncertainty, standing beside Bruce even during his most difficult emotional moments. Their family life introduces a softer side of Bruce's journey. Despite his public intensity and relentless drive, he is also a man who cares deeply about love, connection, and responsibility. These moments reveal that his ambition is not only about fame, it is about creating a future where his identity and beliefs can exist freely. As Bruce Lee moves deeper into the most critical phase of his journey, the story reaches a point where success feels close enough to touch, but still far enough to constantly challenge him. His name is growing in influence, his philosophy is spreading across martial arts communities, and his presence in entertainment circles is becoming harder to ignore. Yet, with every step forward, the weight of resistance and expectation becomes stronger. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues refining his martial arts philosophy into its most complete form. His approach is now fully centered on simplicity, efficiency, and adaptability. He rejects unnecessary formality and believes that true combat understanding comes from awareness, timing, and freedom of expression rather than rigid structure. This philosophy continues attracting attention from serious students and professionals who recognize that Bruce is not just teaching techniques, he is redefining how martial arts can be understood entirely. His influence begins extending beyond training spaces and into entertainment discussions, where people start seeing him as a potential revolutionary figure in action cinema. However, Hollywood's acceptance remains limited. Despite growing interest in Bruce's abilities, the industry still struggles with deeply rooted stereotypes. Executives admire his skill and charisma, but hesitate to place him in leading roles due to outdated expectations about what a global action star should look like. This creates a powerful emotional contradiction in Bruce's life. He is increasingly recognized by audiences and peers, yet still restricted by decision makers who cannot fully envision his potential. The frustration this creates is not just professional, it is deeply personal because Bruce understands that his identity and talent are being underestimated. At the same time, Bruce's home life with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, remains a source of emotional grounding. Their relationship grows stronger as they continue building a family together. Linda supports Bruce through the constant tension of ambition and rejection, offering stability in moments where the outside world feels uncertain and demanding. Their bond reflects another side of Bruce's life, one that is not defined by struggle alone, but also by love, responsibility, and connection. These moments show that behind the public image of a fighter and innovator, Bruce is also someone deeply invested in family and emotional balance. Still, the internal pressure Bruce carries continues to grow. The symbolic emotional weight seen throughout the film becomes more intense during this phase, representing fear of failure, responsibility for success, and the psychological strain of constantly pushing against resistance. The closer he moves toward recognition, the more emotionally complex his journey becomes. Yet Bruce does not slow down. His determination remains absolute. He continues teaching, evolving his ideas, and preparing for the possibility of breaking into mainstream cinema on his own terms. He understands that even if success arrives, it will come with new challenges that demand even greater strength and resilience. And as Bruce Lee stands at the edge of broader recognition and global opportunity, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. True transformation is never comfortable for the world it changes. Because sometimes the greatest breakthroughs are not about arriving at success, but about enduring everything required to make that success possible. As Bruce Lee's journey continues toward global recognition, the story enters a phase where momentum is building, but so is pressure from every direction. His philosophy has begun influencing martial arts culture more widely. His name is gaining serious attention in entertainment circles, and his presence is becoming harder to ignore. Yet, the higher he rises, the more intense the struggle becomes between opportunity and resistance. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, is now fully in control of his martial identity. His system, focused on efficiency, directness, and adaptability, has evolved into something revolutionary. Bruce no longer sees martial arts as fixed traditions, but as a living expression that must evolve with the individual. This belief continues separating him from traditional structures while attracting those who are ready for change. At this stage, Bruce's influence begins reaching beyond training halls and into mainstream entertainment discussions. His demonstrations and growing reputation spark curiosity among filmmakers and industry figures who begin to see him as something new, an action performer with unmatched presence, intelligence, and physical ability. However, Hollywood's hesitation still remains strong. Even as interest in Bruce grows, industry executives struggle with outdated ideas about leading actors and global appeal. Bruce continues facing subtle rejection, not due to lack of talent, but due to systemic limitations and stereotypes that still dominate decision making. This contradiction becomes one of the most emotionally challenging aspects of Bruce's life. He is clearly recognized as extraordinary by audiences and peers, yet still held back by structures that are slow to change. The frustration is not loud, it is constant, building quietly beneath his drive and ambition. At home, Bruce finds emotional balance through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship continues strengthening as they raise a family together. Linda represents stability and emotional grounding in Bruce's life, offering support during moments when pressure and uncertainty become overwhelming. Their bond shows a different side of Bruce, not just the fighter or innovator, but the husband and father trying to build a stable future while chasing a demanding vision. These personal moments add emotional depth to his journey, showing that his life is not only defined by struggle but also by love and responsibility. Still, the internal emotional weight Bruce carries continues to grow. The symbolic darkness present throughout the film reflects the psychological cost of ambition, identity, and expectation. The closer Bruce moves towards success, the more complex the emotional burden becomes. Yet he refuses to stop. His dedication to martial arts, philosophy, and personal growth remains unshaken. He continues refining his ideas, teaching students, and preparing for the possibility of a breakthrough that could change everything. And as Bruce Lee stands on the threshold of wider recognition, one truth becomes clear: progress is never a straight path toward success. It is a constant struggle between vision and resistance, belief and doubt, opportunity and limitation. Because sometimes the people who shape the future are not the ones who are instantly accepted, but the ones who refuse to give up until the world finally catches up to them. As Bruce Lee's life moves deeper into its turning point, the story begins showing how close he is to worldwide recognition and how far he still is from full acceptance. His influence in martial arts is now undeniable. His philosophy is spreading beyond classrooms, and his reputation is slowly entering the mainstream entertainment world. Yet, behind this rising momentum, pressure continues building from both personal and professional sides. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, has now fully established his identity as a martial arts innovator. His approach continues to break away from traditional limitations, focusing on directness, speed, and adaptability. Bruce believes combat should never be restricted by rigid systems, but instead reflect the natural flow of human reaction and awareness. This philosophy continues inspiring many, especially younger students and open minded practitioners who see Bruce as someone redefining what martial arts can become. His influence is no longer limited to training spaces, it is beginning to affect how people think about movement, discipline, and personal expression. At the same time, the entertainment industry becomes more interested in Bruce's unique presence. His demonstrations and public appearances show not only technical skill but also charisma, intelligence, and a screen presence that feels natural and powerful. People begin recognizing that Bruce is not just a martial artist, he has the potential to become a major cinematic figure. However, Hollywood still struggles with acceptance. Despite growing interest, executives remain hesitant due to deeply rooted stereotypes and outdated expectations about leading roles. Bruce understands this clearly, and the frustration builds because he knows his ability far exceeds the opportunities being offered to him. This creates a quiet but constant emotional tension in his life. It is not loud anger, it is the weight of being visible yet still underestimated. Every step forward in recognition is followed by reminders of limitation, making his journey both motivating and emotionally exhausting. At home, Bruce continues finding stability through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship grows stronger as they raise a family together, creating a sense of grounding in the middle of Bruce's demanding life. Linda supports him emotionally, giving him space to remain focused while also reminding him of life beyond struggle and ambition. These family moments highlight an important contrast in Bruce's journey. While the outside world sees a rising icon of martial arts and philosophy, inside his home he is also a husband and father trying to maintain balance, love, and stability. Yet the internal pressure Bruce carries continues increasing. The symbolic emotional darkness shown throughout the film becomes more present during this stage, reflecting the mental strain of constant struggle, expectation, and the fear that success may come with sacrifice. Even so, Bruce does not slow down. His discipline remains absolute. He continues training, teaching, refining his philosophy, and preparing for opportunities that could finally place him on a global stage. And as Bruce Lee stands closer than ever to full recognition, one truth becomes undeniable. Being ahead of your time often means living in constant tension between what is possible and what is accepted, because sometimes the hardest part of greatness is not reaching it, but surviving the long journey of being seen before the world is ready to understand you. As Bruce Lee's journey moves into its most defining phase, the story begins to shift from struggle toward impact. His philosophy is no longer just something practiced in private schools, it is now spreading across wider audiences, influencing how people think about martial arts, movement, and personal discipline. The world is slowly starting to recognize that Bruce is not following tradition, he is reshaping it. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues evolving his martial arts system into its most refined form. His focus remains on efficiency, simplicity, and adaptability, removing unnecessary movements and emphasizing pure expression through controlled power and awareness. Bruce believes that true mastery is not about imitation, but about understanding one's own body and mind completely. At this stage, Bruce's influence becomes more visible in entertainment and film discussions. His demonstrations and growing reputation attract attention from filmmakers who begin to see him not just as a martial artist, but as someone who could redefine action cinema itself. His presence carries something different: authenticity, speed, and intensity that feels naturally cinematic. However, even as opportunities begin to appear, the resistance from Hollywood remains. Industry decision makers continue operating under outdated assumptions about what audiences will accept. Bruce is still viewed through limited expectations, and this continues delaying the full recognition he knows he is capable of achieving. This creates a powerful emotional contradiction in Bruce's life. On one side, he is closer than ever to breaking through into global fame. On the other, he is still fighting against invisible barriers that question his place in that future. The tension is no longer about talent, it is about perception and acceptance. At home, Bruce continues finding emotional grounding through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains a stabilizing force in his life. As they raise a family together, Linda provides emotional balance and support, helping Bruce maintain focus during a period filled with pressure and uncertainty. Their family life shows a different dimension of Bruce's journey. Beyond the public image of a revolutionary martial artist, he is also a husband and father trying to build stability while chasing a demanding vision. These personal moments highlight the emotional depth behind his ambition. Yet, internally, Bruce continues carrying a heavy emotional burden. The symbolic darkness shown throughout the film represents the psychological cost of constant pressure, expectation, and resistance. Even as success draws nearer, the emotional weight does not disappear, it grows alongside achievement. Despite everything, Bruce remains committed to his path. His training, teaching, and philosophical development continue without pause. He understands that breaking into global recognition will not only require talent, but endurance through every barrier placed in front of him. And as Bruce Lee stands at the edge of international recognition and cinematic opportunity, one truth becomes unavoidable. The closer you come to changing the world, the more the world resists changing with you. Because sometimes greatness is not measured by arrival, but by how long you continue moving forward when acceptance is still out of reach. As Bruce Lee's journey approaches its most critical threshold, the story deepens into a space where recognition, resistance, and destiny all begin colliding at once. His influence is now undeniable across martial arts communities, and his presence in entertainment discussions is becoming stronger with every passing moment. Yet the final step into true global recognition still feels just out of reach. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, continues refining his philosophy into its most complete expression. His martial arts system is now fully defined by simplicity, speed, and adaptability, removing everything unnecessary and focusing only on what is real, effective, and natural. Bruce believes that combat, like life, should never be trapped inside rigid structure but should evolve with awareness and instinct. At this stage, Bruce's impact begins extending beyond martial arts schools and into the entertainment industry with increasing seriousness. His demonstrations, interviews, and growing reputation start influencing filmmakers who see him as a potential breakthrough figure, someone who could redefine action cinema with authenticity and intensity never seen before. However, Hollywood still hesitates. Despite clear interest and undeniable talent, industry executives continue operating within outdated frameworks shaped by stereotypes and limited imagination. Bruce is recognized but not yet fully embraced as a leading global star. This gap between potential and acceptance becomes one of the central emotional tensions of his life. Bruce understands what he is capable of, but the world around him still struggles to fully recognize it. This creates a constant emotional pressure, not loud frustration, but a steady weight of delayed recognition. Every step forward feels meaningful, yet incomplete. At home, Bruce continues finding emotional balance through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains one of the strongest grounding forces in his life. As they raise a family together, Linda provides stability, understanding, and emotional support during moments when Bruce's ambition and pressure become overwhelming. These personal moments reveal an important truth about Bruce's life. Behind the public figure of a martial arts revolutionary is a man deeply connected to family, love, and responsibility. His journey is not only about fame or philosophy, it is also about building a life that holds meaning beyond struggle. Yet internally, Bruce continues carrying a heavy psychological burden. The symbolic emotional darkness present throughout the film represents the cost of ambition, identity, and constant resistance. Even as recognition draws closer, the emotional strain does not disappear, it evolves alongside his progress. Despite this, Bruce refuses to slow down. His discipline remains unshaken. He continues teaching, training, and refining his ideas, preparing for the moment when opportunity finally aligns with his vision. And as Bruce Lee stands on the edge of global breakthrough and cinematic transformation, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Being ahead of your time often means living in a space where the future sees you before the present understands you. Because sometimes greatness is not defined by how quickly the world accepts you, but by how long you remain true to your vision while waiting for it to arrive. As Bruce Lee's journey enters its final major turning arc in the story, everything begins converging toward recognition, transformation, and consequence. The years of struggle, rejection, innovation, and persistence are now forming into something larger than personal ambition. It is becoming legacy in motion. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, now stands at the peak of his development as both a martial artist and a creative thinker. His philosophy is fully formed: simplicity over complexity, directness over tradition, and awareness over imitation. He no longer sees martial arts as something bound to culture or limitation, but as a universal expression of human capability. At this stage, Bruce's presence begins influencing the entertainment world more directly. Filmmakers and producers are increasingly aware that his screen energy is something unique, fast, precise, and emotionally powerful. He is no longer just being observed as a martial arts teacher, he is being considered as a potential cinematic force capable of redefining action storytelling. However, even as opportunities begin appearing, resistance still lingers. The industry remains hesitant, caught between admiration and outdated perception. Bruce is closer than ever to breaking through, yet still forced to navigate barriers built from years of stereotype and limited imagination. This tension becomes emotionally significant. Bruce is no longer struggling for basic recognition, he is struggling for full acceptance of his identity and capability. The frustration is quieter now but deeper. It is the weight of knowing you are ready while the world is still catching up. At home, Bruce continues finding grounding through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains a steady emotional foundation as they continue building a family together. Linda supports Bruce through the final stages of his rise, offering stability in a life defined by constant movement and pressure. Their home life reflects balance in contrast to Bruce's external intensity. While the world sees a rising icon, within his family he remains a husband and father, trying to maintain connection, love, and emotional presence. These moments highlight the human side of his journey beyond fame and philosophy. Internally, however, Bruce still carries emotional weight. The symbolic darkness seen throughout the film continues representing the psychological cost of ambition, expectation, and constant struggle against resistance. Even as success approaches, the emotional burden does not disappear, it evolves with him. Yet Bruce remains committed without hesitation. His discipline, focus, and vision continue pushing him forward. He understands that breaking into global recognition is not just about talent anymore, it is about timing, persistence, and enduring every barrier until it finally gives way. And as Bruce Lee stands at the edge of full transformation into a global icon, one truth becomes undeniable: greatness is not only about reaching success, it is about surviving every moment that tries to delay it. Because sometimes the final step toward recognition is simply refusing to stop when everything around you says you should. As Bruce Lee moves deeper into the final stretch of his rise, the story tightens around a powerful shift. Everything he has built is now close to breaking into full global recognition, but the emotional and professional pressure surrounding him is also at its peak. The line between success and struggle becomes thinner, almost invisible. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, is now fully formed as both a martial artist and a creative force. His philosophy has matured into a complete system built on directness, efficiency, and natural expression. He rejects unnecessary formality and believes true skill comes from awareness, timing, and the ability to adapt instantly to any situation. At this point, Bruce's influence is no longer limited to martial arts schools or small demonstrations. His presence begins to shape conversations inside the entertainment industry itself. People start recognizing that his physical ability and screen presence could redefine action cinema completely: more realistic, more intense, and more emotionally grounded than anything seen before. Yet, even with this growing recognition, Hollywood remains cautious. Decision makers still hesitate, held back by outdated expectations and cultural bias. Bruce is admired, studied, and talked about, but not yet fully embraced as a leading global star. This gap between recognition and acceptance becomes one of the central tensions of his life. The emotional weight of this stage is subtle but constant. Bruce is no longer fighting to prove he is capable. He is fighting for the world to finally see what he has already become. That delay creates pressure that builds quietly inside him, shaping his mindset even as his career moves forward. At home, Bruce continues finding emotional balance through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains a stable foundation as they raise a family together. Linda's support becomes essential during this period, helping Bruce stay grounded while his public life moves faster and becomes more demanding. Their family life shows a softer, more human side of Bruce. Away from ambition and struggle, he is a husband and father trying to maintain love, connection, and stability. These moments highlight that his journey is not only about success, it is also about building a meaningful life alongside it. Still, internally, Bruce carries a persistent emotional burden. The symbolic darkness seen throughout the film represents the cost of ambition, identity, and constant resistance. Even as he approaches success, that pressure does not disappear, it evolves alongside his growth. Despite everything, Bruce refuses to slow down. His discipline remains absolute, his vision remains clear, and his determination remains unshaken. He continues preparing for the moment when opportunity finally aligns with his purpose. And as Bruce Lee stands on the final edge of becoming a worldwide icon, one truth becomes unavoidable. Sometimes the world doesn't deny greatness, it delays recognizing it because the final stage of achievement is not just reaching success, it is enduring long enough for success to finally catch up with you. As Bruce Lee's journey enters its final emotional and narrative peak, the story shifts from ambition and struggle into something more profound: legacy, consequence, and the fragile balance between success and sacrifice. Everything he has built through years of discipline, rejection, and innovation now stands at the edge of global recognition. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, is no longer just a rising martial artist or teacher. He has become a fully formed symbol of transformation. His philosophy, centered on simplicity, directness, and adaptability, has reshaped how people understand martial arts. Bruce's identity is now inseparable from his vision of freedom in movement and thought. At this stage, his influence in the entertainment world is undeniable. Filmmakers and industry figures now clearly recognize that Bruce represents something new, an authentic presence capable of redefining action cinema. His speed, intensity, and natural charisma set him apart from anything Hollywood has seen before. Yet, even as recognition finally approaches, the story does not present it as simple victory. Instead, it is layered with emotional weight. Bruce is still navigating the tension between what he has already become and what the world is finally ready to acknowledge. The delay between truth and recognition creates a deep, quiet pressure within him. At home, Bruce continues finding emotional grounding through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains a core emotional anchor as they raise a family together. Linda represents stability and love in contrast to Bruce's intense and demanding external world. Their bond reflects the human side of his journey, beyond philosophy, fame, or legacy. These moments at home highlight a critical truth. Bruce's life is not defined only by struggle and ambition, but also by responsibility, love, and connection. Even as he moves toward global recognition, he remains deeply tied to his role as a husband and father. However, the symbolic emotional weight that follows Bruce throughout the film continues to grow. The internal pressure he carries represents the cost of constant struggle, expectation, and resistance. Even as success becomes closer, it does not erase the emotional burden, it transforms it into something more complex. Bruce continues forward without hesitation. His discipline, focus, and belief in his philosophy remain unshaken. He understands that reaching global recognition is not just about talent anymore. It is about endurance, timing, and surviving every barrier long enough for opportunity to fully open. And as Bruce Lee stands on the final threshold of transformation into a worldwide icon, one truth becomes clear. Greatness is not only defined by reaching the destination, but by everything endured on the way there, because sometimes the world does not stop a legend from rising, it simply takes time to realize it is already standing in front of them. As Bruce Lee's journey reaches its final stretch, the story settles into a powerful emotional phase where everything he has fought for begins to take visible shape. Years of discipline, rejection, innovation, and persistence are no longer just personal struggles, they are now forming the foundation of a legacy that is about to break into the world. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, stands fully realized as both a martial arts visionary and a cultural force. His philosophy, built on simplicity, adaptability, and direct expression, has moved far beyond traditional boundaries. Bruce no longer sees martial arts as a fixed system, but as a living, evolving language of human movement and awareness. At this point, the entertainment world can no longer ignore him. His presence, charisma, and physical mastery make it clear that he is not just a martial artist appearing in media, he is someone capable of reshaping action cinema itself. Industry conversations increasingly revolve around his unique potential, even if full acceptance still lags behind recognition. But the film makes it clear that this moment is not simply about a rival, it is about tension between what Bruce has already become and what the world is still struggling to fully accept. That delay creates a quiet emotional pressure, less visible than earlier struggles but far deeper in meaning. At home, Bruce continues finding stability through Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly. Their relationship remains a steady emotional anchor as they raise a family together. Linda's support allows Bruce to stay grounded while his life outside grows increasingly demanding and intense. These family moments add emotional balance to the story. They show Bruce not only as a rising global figure, but also as a husband and father trying to protect love, connection, and normality within a life driven by ambition and public expectation. Yet internally, Bruce still carries a profound emotional weight. The symbolic darkness present throughout the film reflects the psychological cost of constant pressure, identity struggle, and the pursuit of something larger than oneself. Even as success approaches, that burden does not disappear. It deepens into something more reflective and personal. Still, Bruce does not stop. His discipline remains absolute, his vision remains clear, and his commitment to his philosophy never weakens. He continues moving forward with the understanding that true recognition is not just about talent, it is about persistence through every barrier that delays it. And as Bruce Lee stands on the final edge of becoming a global icon, one truth becomes undeniable. The world does not always reject greatness. Sometimes it simply takes time to catch up to it. Because in the end, the final stage of every legend is not just success but being understood at the moment the world finally learns how to see them. In the final chapter of the story, everything converges into a powerful emotional conclusion where Bruce Lee's journey is no longer just about struggle, ambition, or recognition, but about legacy, impact, and the lasting meaning of a life lived with absolute intensity. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, now stands as a fully realized icon in both martial arts and cultural history within the film's narrative. His philosophy has reshaped how people understand combat, discipline, and personal expression. What once began as a personal search for identity has now become a universal message about freedom, adaptability, and self discovery. At this stage, the world around Bruce can no longer ignore what he represents. His influence has already spread through martial arts communities and is beginning to take form in entertainment and popular culture. The barriers that once limited him are no longer as strong as before, but the journey itself has already demanded a great personal cost. The film emphasizes that Bruce's story is not defined only by achievement, but by the emotional weight carried throughout his rise. The pressure of expectation, constant resistance, and the struggle for acceptance have shaped him just as much as his victories. Even in moments of success, there is always a reminder of what he had to overcome to reach that point. At home, Bruce's relationship with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, remains an emotional anchor. Their family life represents stability in contrast to the intensity of his public journey. Linda's presence reflects love, support, and grounding, reminding Bruce that beyond fame and philosophy, there is also life, responsibility, and connection. These final moments highlight the human side of Bruce's story. He is not only a fighter or visionary, but also a husband and father who sought balance between greatness and personal life. That balance is what gives his journey emotional depth beyond achievement alone. The symbolic emotional darkness that follows Bruce throughout the film also reaches its meaning here. It represents not just struggle, but the cost of becoming something larger than ordinary expectations. Even as recognition arrives, it does not erase the journey, it gives it meaning. In the end, Bruce's story is presented as more than a rise to fame. It is the story of transformation, of someone who refused to accept limitations placed by culture, tradition, or perception, and instead created a path entirely his own. And as the film closes its final emotional arc, one truth stands at the center of everything. A legacy is not measured only by what you achieve in life, but by how deeply your vision continues to influence others long after your journey ends. As the story reaches its final emotional closure, the film steps away from struggle and enters reflection, showing Bruce Lee's life not as a series of battles but as a complete transformation that reshaped how the world sees martial arts, identity, and human potential. Bruce Lee, portrayed by Jason Scott Lee, is finally framed as more than a man trying to prove himself. He is now fully established as a visionary whose ideas have already begun influencing generations beyond his immediate reach. His philosophy, centered on simplicity, adaptability, and freedom of expression, stands as the core of his legacy within the film. The final tone of the story emphasizes that Bruce's journey was never just about personal success. It was about breaking boundaries that others considered permanent. Every rejection, every challenge, and every moment of doubt contributed to shaping a mindset that refused to accept limitation as final truth. At home, Bruce's life with Linda Emery, portrayed by Lauren Holly, is shown as an important emotional foundation. Their relationship represents the human side of his extraordinary journey: love, family, and grounding in a life that was otherwise defined by intensity and ambition. These moments remind the audience that behind the legend was also a man seeking balance and connection. The film's emotional reflection highlights how Bruce's impact extends beyond his physical achievements. His ideas continue living through those who study his philosophy, practice his teachings, and carry forward his vision of martial arts as a universal expression rather than a restricted tradition. Even the symbolic emotional darkness seen throughout the film finds its meaning here. It represents not just struggle or pain, but the process of becoming something greater than expectation. It shows that transformation often requires endurance through misunderstanding, resistance, and isolation before recognition arrives. As the film closes, Bruce's story is no longer about proving worth, it is about the permanence of influence. His life becomes a reminder that true legacy is not measured in moments of success alone, but in the ideas and inspiration left behind. And in its final message, the story leaves one lasting truth: a life is not defined by how long it lasts,